like the rushing of a mighty wind, like the rushing of a mighty wind.
I should probably do a disclaimer, fair use disclaimer. I do not own the content to this video. I just don't. This is just for, commentary and discussion purposes. So, fair use. It's only for fair use. So that's my disclaimer. I'm using this video. Fair use.
What do you guys think like when you see someone with a MAGA hat? Because I know we were kind of talking about that last time.
It depends on how they present themselves. To me.
Yeah.
For me.
Well, okay, so what would present themselves in a way that would be like decent versus piece of shit?
Yeah, some people carry.
Isn't that kind of true about how you feel about anyone wearing any type of hat? It depends on how they present themselves, right? How do you feel about someone wearing a Yankee hat? Depends on how they present themselves, Yeah, depends on how they present themselves.
That air of superiority.
Yeah.
And if you present that to me, I'm very conscious of that. If you present that to me, I'm gonna respond appropriately.
Yeah.
Well, interesting that he would assume that someone who's MAGA would have an air of superiority. That's interesting. That's interesting that's what comes to his mind when he thinks of someone in a MAGA hat, his air of superiority.
That's just me personally.
What would be like an air of superiority? Like
just like certain things you say in conversation, and and like you said, just in the physical nature of these chairs. Well, in conversation, you can physically go up and down and put yourself above or beneath. So when people do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I actually, when I do the change my mind and sit with people, I actually kind of slump my shoulders and deliberately kind of make myself smaller just to not, it's like, what is it, the crab that has the red under its claws is showing danger? So I don't wear red because apparently that signifies poison. But yeah, no, there's all these body language experts now. You watch on TV and I'm like, this seems like horse shit. Like he looks to the left so you can tell he's lying.
Yeah, some of it is horse.
It's like, I saw him on camera. He killed his girlfriend with a butter dish. I don't give a shit what he says.
He took too long to say that answer. He had to think about it. No, he's thinking about what he wants to say.
Yeah.
He don't just spit out. He wants to think about what he's saying.
Last time we talked, we were kind of just, and the reason was just like, often you see in news, people just kind of siphon themselves off right into an echo chamber. And I thought it was good. We were just kind of able to see other perspectives. Where do you think the country is now? Like with that? Like,
is that an open question? Or?
Yeah, race relations between, because last time I wanted to get your perspective, and there's a perspective now in the white community. None of us are an ambassador for the entire community, but things have changed quite a bit the last year and a half. Temperatures have gone up. But what do you guys think? What do you think we are in the country?
I'd like to chime in on that.
Yeah.
I'm happy you asked that question.
Yeah, Stephen seems very focused in what he wants to talk about. Like he has a message that he wants to deliver. And that question he's asking is kind of driving to that message, because I think that's the question he himself wants to answer. But let's listen to Homeboy's response.
There are a lot of social and economic dynamics at play that have certainly gone, in my opinion, in the wrong direction. I don't think that people really understand the gravity of where we're headed. We are vastly sliding into an autocratic regime here. And absolutely. I'll give you several reasons. You see, in order to have, you can't have a one-dimensional approach.
We're slipping into an autocratic regime. An autocratic regime. Those are pretty strong words right there. An autocratic regime. I'm gonna do a quick chat GPT and ask chat GPT what an autocratic regime is. Let's see. An autocratic regime is a system of government where one person or a small group holds absolute power with little or no input from the people. An autocratic regime is a system of government where one person or small group holds absolute power with little or no input from the people. Now, just given that, I don't know how seriously I can take this guy. Like we're slipping into an autocratic regime. You can't be serious. Like, how can I take you seriously if that is, like, what says to you that we are about to go into a phase where one person or a small group has absolute power? No input from the people. We're going to go from rule of, by and for the people to no input by the people, just like that, at the drop of a hat. Like, how do we even take anything else that comes out of his mouth? Why would we take it seriously?
Temperatures have gone up. But what do you guys think? What do you think we are in the country?
I'd like to chime in on that.
Yeah.
I'm happy you asked that question. There are a lot of social and economic dynamics at play that have certainly gone, in my opinion, in the wrong direction. I don't think that people really understand the gravity of where we're headed. We are vastly sliding into an autocratic regime here. And absolutely. I'll give you several reasons. You see, in order to have, you can't have a one-dimensional approach when you're wanting to continue to lead from a global perspective, all right? What you see here today is an isolationism approach which has never worked in the past because we don't have an understanding of geography and history, all right? And I'll just simply close by saying, you got to understand something. The rest of the world is grossly infuriated with the way America has taken shape. And not only that, we're ceding all our best opportunities to China, right? Look around you in the relationships they're fostering with everybody else, which includes Canada, Mexico, and they've even gone as far down into the Latin American corridor, fortifying their bases while we're still hollering that we're the greatest.
Yeah, funny enough, nothing of which he said has anything to do with an autocratic regime. Absolutely none of what he just said has anything at all to do with an autocratic regime. But according to him, we're slowly sliding into an autocratic regime.
About China, like in the Panama Canal?
Not just the Panama Canal. Let's pivot from the Panama Canal and let's look at the long-term strategy they have now, where they just signed an agreement with Mexico to build another canal bypassing the Panama Canal. And when you look at the whole transatlantic corridor, where you got now Brazil and Canada as well as Mexico trading, and they're stopping in Peru, where China has a huge presence at, circumventing completely the navigation, the use that comes with having to use the Panama Canal. So we'll avoid conflict with America and just simply go around America is what's happening here.
Talking about China?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean, I want to agree with the first part, autocratic. I think China needs to be dealt with, and this is the first time we are. I'm Canadian. Well, I was raised in Canada. Canada sucks. Canada is a dog shit country. Canada, the kind of shit we're doing, you can't do this in Canada. If you say something too offensive or I say something too offensive, you will be jailed in Canada.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. So I'm fine with the U.S. being the best country. I came here from Canada because, I mean, I have friends who were arrested. I had a friend, stand-up comic, was fined for telling a joke. I don't think people realize how good we have it here in this country compared to other countries.
But that's the painstaking part about it all, is the fact that, you know, I've always been one to say, and I believe this firmly, freedom is not a right. It's a privilege until you wake up the next morning and find out you don't have it anymore.
Yeah. It also comes with duties.
That's what I was about to say. It also comes with responsibilities, because while we free to speak and say what we want, and I went to Montreal a few months ago, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Bet you saw a lot of tits on signs. That's all it is.
No, I didn't.
It's just.
Wow, that's interesting. I've always, for some reason, thought that Canada was so much similar to America. But I guess in really subtle ways, they are quite different. There are freedoms that we have in America that, you know, just aren't present in Canada. As similar as we are, and as much as we get along, we're quite different in a lot of important ways.
Strip clubs. Our Times Square is a giant strip club.
It was a couple of them.
Yeah.
But no, like there is responsibility, and like everybody's from different places, different backgrounds. Some of us from certain backgrounds know like running your mouth too much in a certain space can get your ass whooped.
Yeah.
Like you're free to say what you want, you're just not free from the consequences. Like the consequences that come with you saying the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person.
Yeah.
And that's where we all have responsibilities in what we say and when we say it.
Yeah. The problem, though, too, and that's I was kind of talking more domestically. The problem with that idea is a lot of people are offended by different things, and so people get their ass whooped for something they didn't say. Right? That's the real thing. I don't know if you guys were following the stabbing there on that train in Charlotte, Irina Zarutska. Last time I was asking where you guys thought we were, you know, as far as in the country relation. Like, have you guys heard of the term black fatigue? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You guys know what that means?
Since the last time you came, that's become a thing.
Yeah, I was about to say that's just become a recent thing.
And do you know what it means?
I'm not sure.
It's a term that's being used by people in the white community, by and large, again, saying.
How do they all know the term, but none of them know what it means? How do they all know the term, but none of them knows what it means?
They feel like they've been victimized, and they're tired of taking that shit. You know, that was a girl who was dying alone in public, and that was a guy who was let out 14 times, including violent crimes, in the name of racial justice, right? He didn't have to post bail. He didn't have to appear back in court. This is not the first time he's assaulted someone.
How do we know that was in the interest of racial justice as opposed to just being
because the judge said it.
A fucked up attempt at justice, period.
Yeah.
Like the legal system has its flaws.
Yeah.
And people have been making complaints about that for decades, right?
And I guess black fatigue is that message that Crowder wants to deliver. And it would be, because that's the title of his video, Black Fatigue. And black fatigue is real, and I told them why. So it's obvious that is absolutely what he wants to talk about, black fatigue. I think he may be experiencing a lot of black fatigue himself, which I think is what makes him, you know, feel like he should be delivering the message. But let's listen.
But that's just, to me, that's a mental health thing more than it's a black and white thing.
Well, I'll tell you why, because white people are saying it now.
Right.
Not just white people are saying, hey, we're in
makes it a bigger thing.
Well, because, you know, white people are 12 times as likely to be killed by a black person than the other way around. I'm just going to shoot you straight. It's not even close.
Where?
Across the country.
Where? I like it. Not in.
Yeah, it's a term that's being used by.
Yeah, I will say, I think he's saying that it's a racial, or it's a racial incident that happened, the stabbing on the train. And, you know, the barber was saying that in his view, it was a mental health issue, because the guy that did the stabbing was mentally off his rocker. But Crowder is actually saying that the judge that let him off was motivated by racial justice, and, you know, letting him free from prison because of having to do with racial justice. And, you know, the system that we're living in now, the legal system, you know, they don't hold prisoners anymore. They let them go. And his point is that that's all in the name of racial equality and racial justice and things of that nature. And that's what he's saying. That's why he's saying it's racial. So whether the guy stabbed the girl because for racial reasons, you know, even though he was saying he got the white girl, but regardless of that, Crowder is going from the judge and what motivated the judge to let this guy out.
People in the white community, by and large, again, saying they feel like they've been victimized and they're tired of taking that shit. You know, that was a girl who was dying alone in public. And that was a guy who was let out 14 times, including violent crimes in the name of racial justice, right? He didn't have to post bail. He didn't have to appear back in court. This is not the first time he's assaulted someone.
How do we know that was in the interest of racial justice as opposed to just being
because the judge said it.
A fucked up attempt at justice, period.
Yeah.
Like, the legal system has its flaws.
Yeah.
And people have been making complaints about that for decades, right? But that's just, to me, that's a mental health thing more than it's a black and white thing.
Well, I'll tell you why, because white people are saying it now.
Right.
Not just, white people are saying, hey, we're in
what makes it a bigger thing.
Well, because, you know, white people are 12 times as likely to be killed by a black person than the other way around. I'm just going to shoot you straight. It's not even close.
Where?
Across the country.
Where? I like, not in
the United States. I mean, we're not talking about Ghana.
In like,
yeah.
What I'm saying is, in white communities or in quote unquote so-called white communities,
across the country, the rate is a black man or person, because most murders men. There are very few female murders. 12 times more likely to kill a white person the other way around. And then you look at the average amount of times that someone in this country is arrested before they're brought in for killing, charged with murder. Do you know how many times they're arrested on average before they murder? 11 times.
Once again, the justice system's got its flaws, and people have been complaining about that for years. We spend more time trying to fix that than trying to complain about the white versus black of it all.
Well, I think, just like I was trying to listen to all communities last time, I think this is something that's unavoidable. If this community, if enough white people get pissed off, they're going, look, we're living in New York now, we're getting killed in record numbers, or Detroit, 12 times the rate. And our system, 3 strikes in California, right? That was a 3-strike policy. The reason that was changed, they said it was racist. Crime went down in black communities 30%. But now people are looking at their cities going, this is a fucking hellscape. And the murders skyrocketed because people said in the name of racial justice, like, 3 felonies, you're out.
Because crime is crime, right? But crime is usually going to be higher concentrated in areas where there's high poverty. So typically the areas that's high poverty in this country are areas with people with this color skin. So that's why you're going to have that. That's why I said those numbers could be skewed and made to manipulate to look like, oh yeah, that's why I said in
not at 12 times the rate.
In suburban neighborhoods, white people are not in danger, and that's what this kind of fear mongering tells them, is that you're in danger because you're 12 times more likely to get killed by a black person. You live in ain't nobody coming after you. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody tripping on you. But these people are just as scared as the other folks.
They are if they get on a bus.
I'm trying to figure out what his point is. His point seems to be that white people shouldn't be worried about getting killed by black people because they don't live amongst them. They live in the suburbs. Like, so he seems to be telling white folks to just stay in the suburbs. Like, as long as they don't live amongst black folks, it's not a problem. Like, I absolutely don't know what his point is. Like, if the statistics say black people are 12 times more likely to kill a white person, or a white person is 12 times more likely to get killed by a black person than vice versa, like, what does it matter where they live? Like, I don't even know what point he's trying to make at this point.
They are if they get on a train.
That lady wasn't in danger because that man was black. That lady was in danger because that man was crazy.
Nope.
That man was mentally insane.
But why was he back in
family members? He had his own family members call the hospital to try to get him committed. He told his sister he killed that woman because he thought she was trying to read his mind.
Yep. Why was he let out, though? And I'm not saying it's because he's black.
Yeah,
I'm saying people look at it, though. The judge said
part of black fatigue.
He's insane, right? We agree.
That's not a black and white issue.
He was deemed not fit to stand trial, right?
Right.
Now,
the IOU institutionalized.
Right. The IOU policy, meaning you don't have to pay bail. You don't even have to stay here until you're actually convicted. You just say you'll come back.
Right, which is messed up.
Yeah, the judge, Teresa Stokes, black woman, said, well, this is about racial justice. We need to be softer on crime. So that's her reasoning. That's why he was out. And you can find dozens of examples.
That's her misguided reasoning.
And that's policy.
But that's systemic, though, right?
That's not representative of a whole.
It's not. It's not. No, and look, we always have to say not all. Like, not all white people wear MAGA hats and are dumbass pieces of racist shit. But we have all been accused of racism, sexism, misogyny, homophobia. What I'm saying is black fatigue is white people going, you know what? I know I'm not racist. And I know that we're dealing with record crime, and I know that I'm more at risk, and they have negative interactions, and they're constantly told that they're not allowed to voice their fucking opinion because they're white. And if those people get pissed off, like that's where we actually could end up with some kind of, I'm telling you, I see this brewing. I see people who were milquetoast white suburban who are becoming actually racist. Now, not all of them, but I've seen people actually become racist because they get mugged, their store gets looted, and nothing gets done. They're going, and if I say something, it's turned into a race thing. I'm telling you what, that's where it's coming from. At what point do we have a talk and go like, okay, let's reform justice, but we have to be honest as to why it was reformed in the first place. This guy, it's not even the only one. It's every 3 days someone's being offed.
Yeah, but at the same time, let's transfer that over to, you know, I mean, there's a lot of unsafe things in this world. Like getting mugged by a black person is not the paramount unsafe thing. There's school shootings, there's road rage, there's all of that shit.
Yep.
And the primary people that commit a lot of those are people who don't have this skin.
No.
So if switch it over, if black people say, well, we getting fed up and we tired of all these school shootings and all of these road rage and all that, who do we say something to? Who hears our voice?
And when does the white fatigue kick in?
And when does the white fatigue kick in?
Well, we've been hearing about white, that's the point, right? We've been hearing about it all our lives, about white fatigue, about systemic discrimination.
But nothing's ever been done. That's the problem.
It has been done.
Here.
That's why we've done systemic justice reform that has led to more crime, right? That's the reason for no three-strike policy. That's the reason for cashless bail. That's the reason for catch and release. The reason for it, in the wake of Black Lives Matter, George Floyd riots, Summer of Love, was we're going to reform crime, we're going to reform the justice system, and it's gotten worse everywhere it's been. And then when white people leave those neighborhoods, well, now it's white flight.
I wonder if Crowder would admit that white fatigue is real, is based in something real. Like he just admitted that they've been dealing with white fatigue forever. Right? So I wonder if he would admit that it's based in something real. Because, you know, white fatigue is black folks being tired of how they're treated by white folks. But I just wonder if Crowder would say white fatigue is something that's real. And if it's not, is black fatigue going to lead to something different than what white fatigue led to? What is brewing out of the black fatigue that he sees white people having that did not brew with the black fatigue? I'm sorry. What, right. What is brewing from the black fatigue he sees white folks having that is not brewing or that has not brewed from the white fatigue that he admits black folks have been having? And so, you know, yeah, just exactly what is brewing that's different that we haven't seen before.
They come in as gentrification. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of people who are pissed.
That commit a lot of those are people who don't have this skin.
No.
So if switch it over, if black people say, well, we getting fed up and we tired of all these school shootings and all of these road rage and all that, who do we say something to? Who hears our voice?
And when does the white fatigue kick in?
And when does the white fatigue?
But I don't know, even with school shootings, I don't know if the same way, you know, his complaint is that white folks have this fatigue because they are 12 times more likely to be victims of black crime than the other way around, than black people are to be a victim to a white crime. They're 12 times more likely. I don't know if black people are 12 times more likely to be the victim of a white school shooting, or 12 times more likely to be the victim of anything that they just listed here. I just don't see where I would agree that that's true. So I don't know if the analogy holds, just simply for that reason. If you can show me where this this white fatigue that they're talking about, being tired of these school shootings. If you can show me where white school shooters kill more black folks than whites or anybody else, then they'll have a point. But I don't think they're going to be able to show that. So I don't know if their fatigue in that instance would be justified. You know, it would just be a fatigue on the fact that they are white people doing the shooting. But if you're not the victim of it, it's not the same type of fatigue.
Well, we've been hearing about white. That's the point, right? We've been hearing about it all our lives, about white fatigue, about systemic discrimination. I'm Canadian, right?
Done. That's the problem.
It has been done. That's why we've done systemic justice reform that has led to more crime, right? That's the reason for no three-strike policy. That's the reason for cashless bail. That's the reason for catch and release. The reason for it, in the wake of Black Lives Matter, George Floyd riots, Summer of Love, was we're going to reform crime, we're going to reform the justice system, and it's gotten worse everywhere it's been. And then when white people leave those neighborhoods, well, now it's white flight. If they come in, it's gentrification. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of people who are pissed off, and they're not going to sit down and have this conversation and be real about it. And they're going, well, what happens when someone has to keep their mouth shut about everything?
Nobody tell you have to keep
That's
your
how they
mouth
feel.
shut.
That's how they feel.
I don't believe white people have to keep their mouth shut. I think white people don't speak up about a lot of the things that they do and they perpetuate that affects us negatively. That's the stuff that nobody wants to. That the issues aren't made about those things. You know, I really respect the platform that you have, because you do have open and honest conversations. And I have to say, I don't believe that those numbers about the black people murdering white people are correct. I don't believe those numbers are correct.
What if they are? What if I'm not lying to you?
If you're not, then I've been misled and I've been isolated from realistic numbers. But I know in this country, from the time that we got here and until now, there's never been hordes of black people that
everywhere it's been, and then when white people leave those neighborhoods, well, now it's white flight. If they come in, it's gentrification. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of people who are pissed off, and they're not going to sit down and have this conversation and be real about it. And they're going, well, what happens when someone has to keep their mouth shut about everything?
Nobody tell you have to keep
That's
your
how they
mouth
feel.
shut.
That's how they feel.
I don't believe white people have to keep their mouth shut.
I believe that white folks believe they're given the message that they should keep their mouth shut. I believe that. You know, with the N-word, they can't use the N-word. But black folks get to call them a cracker, and they can't complain about it. Black folks get to say cracker as much as they want, and white folks cannot say anything about it. They just have to keep their mouth shut and just eat it. And as far as it comes to the N-word, they have to keep their mouth shut with that as well. They can't use that word, and they can't complain when any word is used against them. So I do believe that they feel as if they are being made to keep their mouth shut.
White people don't speak up about a lot of the things that they do and they perpetuate that affects us negatively. That's the stuff that nobody wants to. That the issues aren't made about those things. You know, I really respect the platform that you have, because you do have open and honest conversations. And I have to say, I don't believe that those numbers about the black people murdering white people are correct. I don't believe those numbers are correct.
What if they are? What if I'm not lying to you?
If you're not, then I've been misled and I've been isolated from realistic numbers. But I know in this country, from the time that we got here and until now, there's never been hordes of black people that just go out and maraud and menace white people. Interactions happen and things do occur. I'm not saying that they don't, but not by and large in number. We can't be this small a percentage of the overall population and still have the numbers that people try to perpetuate onto us. See, black people do more harm to other black people than we do to other white people.
Well, that's true. That's true.
You know,
because people who are close. That's true.
We also have historical evidence of groups of white people attacking and chasing black people.
So it's
coming after.
So
like,
when people
we have
say
historical
it's not
evidence
happening now.
So
I'm just saying,
and that's.
And none of that, you know, changes the fact that white folks are 12 times more likely to be a victim than black folks. You can bring in all the anecdotal stuff you want, but the data is the data. The data says what the data says. White folks are more likely to be attacked, violated by blacks than the other way around. That's just what the data says. It doesn't say it doesn't happen the other way. It just says who's more likely and how more likely are you. And in this case, white folks are way more likely to get beat up by black folks than the other way around, whether it be through gangs of people or one person beating up one person. Doesn't make a difference. And none of what they're saying changes that data.
The point is we're at a precipice right now.
That's a part of the historical condition.
Well, sure, but someone today.
Hold on.
Yeah,
I wasn't
Big Mike,
finished making
go.
my point.
Sorry,
I wasn't finished making my point. You know, when like I said, black fatigue, that's the newest mantra that's been put out into society to make people think that, okay, they tired of black people. They tired of what you said, that we can't say anything about black people. We can't do. Well, when you hold all the power, when you hold all the economic rights, when you hold all the things that make this country move, when you're in charge of those things, you know what I'm saying? Well, you know what? I put it like this. Black people, white people got the fight.
You know, for people who claim to have built America, when black folks are ready, we claim to not have no power to do anything. White people have all the power, white people have all the access, white people have all the control, and stuff just happens to black folks. Like, when it's convenient to us, we built this thing from the ground up. But when it's not, oh no, we don't control anything. Everything just happens to us. We don't control nothing.
Firecrackers, we got the stem. That's it. Y'all got the power. The power is placed outside of the black community. We're charged with all the negative things. Those are the things that are really generally coincide with how people relate to us. The bad stuff that's go wrong with this world is the black people's fault. We the smallest part of this country. Remember that. You know what I'm saying? Beside the immigrants that come here, we have been tasked with the negative, the criminal, the immoral. That's us, and that's what we consider. That's white fatigue. But you know what we do? We just say that's just how it's always been. So we don't make up words for it or terms for it. So now you have a frustrated group of white constituents that feel like, oh, we can't say anything. We have to do this. We have to do that. So you don't be deemed as that. Well, if you wasn't that in the beginning to start with, there would be no need for the reform or the feelings that you have. You can't say anything about, because you done treated us like shit for so long, and people finally stood up and said, hey, you got to stop treating us like shit. Now that you want to feel like, you know, things aren't going in the manner that you want them, now we want the right to keep saying those things.
What if your premise is completely flawed?
You? Can you hear me out there? Yeah, I think you can hear me. P, so that's a good question you're asking, Dex. Dex, let me know if you can hear me. So I'm looking up what you asked me to look up. I'm just going to read this real quick, and then I'll let the video continue to play. But it said, I asked, is Steven Crowder correct that blacks are 12 times more likely to kill whites than vice versa. And ChatGPT says, no, that claim is misleading and not supported by the best available data. It says, let me break down what the data say and where such claims go wrong. What the actual data show. Looking at the FBI's expanded homicide data from 2019 for single victim, single offender incidents, there were 2,594 cases of white victims killed by black offenders in 2019. In contrast, there were 2,574 cases of black victims killed by white offenders. So in that year, the numbers are almost equal. That does not support a 12 times multiplier in either direction. But you know, what stood out for me, Dex, is that, you know, there are only like 43 million black people in America. Right, 43 million blacks and over 200 million white folks. Right, so 43 million blacks in 2019. The way I think of it, 43 million blacks killed 2,500 whites, and 200 million whites killed 2,500 blacks. Right, so even when you look at just that rate alone, right? If you understand what I'm saying, Dex, put something in the chat if you follow the point I'm trying to make. Black people are more likely to kill a white person than whites are to kill a black person. Because even in 2019, even though the numbers were equal, you have to consider just the total number of the black population. Yeah, so that's how I choose to kind of look at that. And so from my vantage point, the way I see it, I still think that, you know, just that alone says something. Yeah, I know. We didn't speak about police brutality, Dex. I'm hoping you would just respond to what I read. But it says, if someone claims blacks are 12 times more likely to kill whites than whites kill blacks, that would imply for every white victim by black offenders, there would be only approximately 0.083 or 1 out of 12 blacks killed by whites. But the data do not show that kind of disparity. Also, more broadly, most homicides are intraracial. Victim and offender share the same race. For example, many white victims are killed by white offenders. Many black victims are killed by black offenders. Crime is heavily correlated with proximity, social networks, socioeconomic conditions, environment, policing, and other structural factors, not simply race alone. Then it says why the 12 times figure is wrong and how such claims arise. It says there are several ways statistics like 12 times more likely get produced, but they typically rest on flawed methodology, selective use of data, or ignoring base rates. Some common problems: one, cherry picking years or regions or sample types. Someone might pick a particular city or a year with an unusual spike and generalize it nationally. Right, so the generalizing it nationally may be what the problem is, but can you find pockets, certain cities where the 12 times number works? Sure. Can you find pockets where it works the other way? Maybe. I'm not so sure, but maybe. It says using, and number two, a common problem that it says they're facing is that they are using arrest data, not homicide data. Arrests are not the same as convictions, nor are they evenly distributed across offenses or demographics. Number three, ignoring population size or base rates. Blacks are 13% of US population, non-Hispanic, while whites are a much larger share. Comparisons must adjust for population differences. And that's kind of what I just tried to point out. You know, 25 in 2019, 2,500 blacks were killed by whites, and 2,500 whites were killed by blacks. So those numbers seem equal. However, if you look at the population size of blacks and then the population size of whites, you'll see that blacks kill whites at a higher rate. Like, you're more likely, it's 2,500 white people killed by, let's say, 43 million blacks. 43 million blacks killed 2,500 blacks. 43 million blacks killed 2,500 whites. 200 million blacks. I'm sorry, 200 million whites. So that's 5 times the number of whites are doing the same number of, killing the same number of black folks. So I have a problem with that. The fourth reason it says there are problems is because they're ignoring that many crimes are intraracial. More victims are killed by offenders of the same race. So cross-race homicide is relatively uncommon. Number 5 is misinterpretation, rounding, exaggeration, or mistakes in reference. And the bottom line, it says the 12 times more likely claim is false when compared against the best public data. Example, FBI UCR expanded homicide rate. The data show nearly equal raw counts in some years and far more intraracial homicide. But equal raw counts, again, equal raw counts would work in the favor of whites because there are just so many more of them. You know, if you have a gang, right, that has 200 million members, and another gang that has 40 million members, and both gangs kill the same number of people, then the gang with 43 million, the gang with less people is going to be considered to be more violent. And they're, you know what I mean? Like, they're just more violent in terms of the rate. And so I think that is, that just makes sense to me. It says the proper interpretation of homicide or violence statistics must consider context, base rates, and structural variables. And I agree with that. And because I agree with that, I think that the 12 times more likely number is not crazy. It's in that ballpark, I think. Give me a second. Let me take a phone call.
What I mean by that is, if we're trying to understand it, you said you have power in all those institutions.
Yes.
What if, for example, you have an entire...
Because I didn't know what this man was trying to say either. I'm glad Crowder knew what he was saying to be able to respond. But the only response I was going to have for him is, man, I don't even know what you're saying, bro.
entire generation of people, young white men, women, who if they apply to a college or apply to a job, they don't have
Yeah, so let me just finish this reading. ChatGPT said, if you'd like, I can dig up more recent years, 2020 to 2024, and see whether recent data ever approach a 12 times ratio. And I said, okay, let's do it. And it said, I looked for more recent data and did not find credible evidence supporting a claim that blacks are 12 times more likely to kill whites than whites kill blacks. Here's a summary of what I found and why the 12 times claim doesn't hold up. What the data say more recently. The supplemental homicide reports or expanded homicide data from recent years remain the main published source for cross-race homicide breakdowns. But for many recent years, detailed race-by-race breakdowns, victim race times offender race, are either delayed in reporting or not published in a consistently comparable manner. For older years like 2019, the most recent year for which detailed FBI Table 6 cross-race data is easily accessible, the numbers are quite close. In 2019, there were 2,594 white victims killed by black offenders versus 246 black victims killed by white offenders in the single offender subset. So here is giving me some different numbers. It says 22,594 white victims killed by black offenders versus 246 black victims killed by white offenders. And I think the difference in the numbers here is that it says this is in the single victim, single offender subset. So that's when it's one person killed by one person. So it looks like it's more even when it's not single victim, single offender. But when you look at just single victim, single offender, then blacks kill whites a lot more often. And it says that is not a 12 times ratio in either direction. It is more likely approximately a 10.5 times in that particular subset. So when it comes to single victim, single offender, in that subset, blacks are 10 times, 10.5 times more likely to kill whites than whites to kill blacks. So, if he was off, he was off by 1.1.5% or 1.5 times. And 10.5 times more likely is not far off from 12 decks. So, and I think this may be the data he was looking at, single offender, single victim. That may have been that data that he was looking at. And it says, but that 10.5 times is only for that restricted data slice, which is single victim, single offender, where race is known. When you include all homicides and normalize per population and this, I'm sorry, let me say it again. When you include all homicides and normalize per population, the disparities shrink and intraracial homicide dominates. That is, most killings are within the same race. The raw single offender, single victim subset is not representative of all homicide reports. It says, I found a 2023 report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Homicide Victimization in the US 2023, which gives overall victimization rates by race, though not cross-race offender breakdown. For example, in 2023, the homicide victimization rate for Black persons was approximately 21.3 per 100,000 versus 3.2 per 100,000 for white person. And it says that shows that Black persons are more likely to be victims of homicide overall, but does not say who kills them by race. But if we agree that intraracial homicide is more frequent than interracial, then that 21.3 per 100,000, like, it's the offenders are more likely Black people. The vast majority of offenders that commit murders against Black people are other Black people. So it is very true that Black people are more likely to be killed by other Blacks than they are to be killed by whites. Right? And it's also very true, given these numbers, 21.3 murders per 100,000. $21.3 out of every 100,000 black people get murdered every year, and only 3.2 out of every 100,000 white folks get murdered every year, which means the black community in and of itself is more violent. The black community is way more violent, about 7 times more violent overall than the white community. And just because of, for that reason, I would say if blacks are more likely to kill other blacks, blacks are more likely to kill white. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, let me just finish this reading. It says, why there's no strong evidence for a sustained 12 times ratio. The 12 times figure is often quoted without specifying the denominator or subset, that is per capita in a certain city or state, only single offender cases, only known race cases, etc. The cross-race homicide data is incomplete or has missing entries, cases where offender race is unknown, and multiple offenders. Most homicides are intraracial. Example, a very large share of white victims are killed by white offenders. Similarly, many black victims are killed by black offenders. This fact dilutes any extreme cross-race ratio when considering total homicides. Per capita adjustments matter a lot. Comparing raw counts without accounting for population size leads to misleading impressions. But ChatGPT, I'm saying if we do take population size into consideration, it works against black folks. Because they're killing 2,500, 43 million black in the black population, 2,500 white murders by black. So 43 million whites kill 2,500 whites. 200 million whites kill the same number of blacks. So even there, black people are more violent towards white folks than whites are towards blacks. Just in that rate alone. Just in that rate alone. So, you know, can you find data? Is there data out there that counters the 12 times ratio data? Yes, you can find that data. Again, it depends on the sample you're using, the sample size you're using, the city you go to, the state you go to, the year you look at. There's a lot of different, you know, there's a lot of stuff that just makes a difference. And those things have to be taken into consideration. But let me take this call.
A grant, there's no Pell Grant, there's no type of subsidy, there's no DEI initiative. As a matter of fact, they're likely to be passed over. They hold no institutional power. And when you say black people haven't done anything, when you think of this white person, a young white person, because I'm seeing some people become radicalized and it can become a problem. And then they see billions of dollars and riots and damages all summer long, and then they go, why is this happening? Black Lives Matter, right? So they're going to make that connection. Now, they have no institutional power, but if they go into a neighborhood that's largely black, they're going to get the shit kicked out of them. And they're being blamed for something that supposedly their racist forefather did that they have nothing to do with. You think we're ever going to have unity? This is the problem. Unity, if let's say your dad's a or your grandfather's a and you walk up and you slap his teenager, you now have made that person hate you for life. And that's what I'm seeing with young, not even my generation. Younger people are going, I had nothing to do with this shit. They came up during the riots. They've come up under DEI, and they're seeing a 12-time murder rate, skyrocketing crime, and any proposals they make, not holding institutional power, shut down as racist.
Now, why was DEI even instituted in the first place? Because for the majority of time that black people have been in this country and been free, we've been denied so much. Somebody somewhere had to put some things in place to provide access of some kind.
If you believe that, that's fine, but you can't tell that young white kid who had nothing to do with it that he should just sit down and take it. especially when they're getting killed at times.
That's what America's been telling us for the longest.
The young white man that has
not in my lifetime.
DEI, the young person of this generation that you said that feels they're misled by the being mistreated by the DEI.
I'm just using as an example. They don't hold any institutional power. Young white people don't. They don't have an advantage.
Not yet, because they're young white people. They haven't advanced to where they're middle-aged white people, where the power comes. See, what black people, once again, when you got colleges that denied access to black people, you can't come here. Something had to be put in place. Well, look, y'all got to let some black people come here. Y'all can't just
that started happening long before DEI. Long before black people were admitted into colleges, HBCUs.
Hold on, let me say what I'm trying to say.
My bad. I'm trying to make it clear.
He's trying to do a senior census and talk through you. So
well, I get it. DEI is just a new way of wrapping affirmative action.
Yeah.
Affirmative action had to be put in place because there was the access being denied. So the legislation had to be put in place. Well, look, we can't just exclude all of them. So somewhere along the line, they have to be allowed some access. Okay, that was put in place. Now, fast forward till now, those same things that are put in place for those people back in those generations that are still in place, they're not excluding people from getting to places they're just still trying to keep those doors open so that those black people that were coming through that door can still get in. Because if you remove those, over time, we will be denied the access.
If a black person has lower SATs, right, and a lower GPA, should he get in over an Asian or a white person?
Let me ask. If all things are supposed to be laid out equal, no, you shouldn't get. If you don't have it,
that's what's happening.
What it takes to get in. No, but
it is happening, and I'm telling you, young white dudes are pissed. I'm telling you,
the majority of what's happening.
It is happening.
It is happening. In relation to DEI, first of all, DEI has been more beneficial. I'm a former commercial contractor, all right? DEI and affirmative action have benefited white people vastly more so than black people. All you gotta do is look at the business ownership or what have you, and you notice that as long as that white female happens to be 51%, then she qualifies as a minority and a double minority because she's white, she's among the minority in business ownership, and she happens to be a female, right? So you look at that based on population dynamics, and that automatically tells you this whole thing about DEI was number one, not as much targeted towards blacks as much as it was targeted towards minorities, which includes that LGBT.
I agree.
Right? So when we talk about that, we need to really deal with the real problem. And as it relates to the riots, let me tell you something right now. Listen, in the black community, I'll be the first to acknowledge, we do have intractable problems that are not going to be solved in one conversation. But what I'm going to say about that, as well as the reason why the black community becomes so infuriated, all right, is when you see gross negligence of justice happen or misjustice happening and nobody does anything. When this guy kneeled on this man's neck, look, if he had done something, when he was subdued and on the ground, what was the real reason for kneeling on his neck except to inflict fatal harm? What was it?
I can tell you exactly what it was.
What does George Floyd have to do with DEI? How does what happened to George Floyd justify DEI? I don't even know why he's bringing up George Floyd. Are they talking about DEI? What does George Floyd have to? Let's let this video play because most of the stuff these guys are bringing up, I'm like, what are y'all talking about?
I can tell you why you're not recognizing the problem. Because the opinion polls, and I'm not saying right or wrong, the opinion polls have changed on George Floyd since I last spoke with you. You know why?
Why?
All the body cam footage came out. You know what? You know why? Because he was there for 12, 15 minutes, asked to be put in the car. They put him in the car, asked for air conditioning, gave him air conditioning, asked to be taken out of the car. They took him out of the car. He wouldn't stop moving. People have watched it now and go, you know what? It's not what I thought it was. You know how many times he was arrested before that? 9. He shouldn't have been. You know what would have saved him? 3-strike policy. He robbed a woman at gunpoint with a child in the house. And so white people look at it, young white people, right? Who you have to understand, during COVID, this is a whole generation of people. White people did not have any fucking opportunities during COVID. They didn't get to go to the graduation, college, black, white, all of them, right? It's a generation that's pissed. Rightfully so, they got screwed. I think we can agree on that.
Does Stephen really think that this message is gonna resonate with with black folks, the fact that young white folks are getting upset and are becoming racist. Is that an argument that they're gonna respond to? I don't know how responsive they're gonna be. I don't know if that's gonna make them say, "Oh wow, I gotta check my behavior." Why young white people are getting mad? They may look at this as evidence that they're doing something right. Because I think that just may be the response they're looking for. And if it's not the response they're looking for, I don't know if they care regardless. I don't know if this is gonna be what motivates them to change. Because nothing else has motivated them so far. Cleaning up their own neighborhoods hasn't motivated them. Being more patriotic hasn't motivated them. Nothing has really motivated them, and to change how they feel about America and Americans and white Americans in particular. And I just don't see where the anger of young white people is gonna make them act up. I think they're gonna say they don't really care if white folks are angry. And they're gonna tell those white folks that they need to go be angry at their elders, at their parents, and that whatever anger they're feeling because of what their parents did, and they're not going to take responsibility for it. And because they don't take responsibility for it, they're not going to respond to it in any type of meaningful way.
When I watched my city burn down for a guy who was arrested 9 times and committed violent crimes against women. What?
Now, let me say,
that's a travesty of justice. He shouldn't be out in public.
Let me say this.
How many felonies does President Trump have on his record? Yeah, he was still allowed to occupy the most.
No criminal felonies.
He has no criminal felonies, but he's got moral felonies, which would, if there was a court of justice for that, he probably would be tried a long time ago. I mean, let's talk about it.
Is this where we all get on board with crazy white bitches who accuse women of rape?
No, not at all.
She accused 26 men of rape. That
not
crazy
at all.
broad.
Here's the reality, though. And when you look at the convergence of this new agenda, where you're going strictly in the blue cities, why is it that most of those blue cities also happen to be occupied? The areas they're going in are heavily occupied by minorities. Why is that so?
Well, black people tend to vote Democrat, and they're run by Democrats. Detroit, you can look at it. You can look at Chicago. Is that what you mean?
I mean, no, that's not what I'm asking you at all. What I'm asking you is, like I said, with this all-out assault right now, just last night they were talking about something in Chicago, right? But at 1 o'clock in the morning, you had people in military gear, what have you, helicopters and all this kind of stuff like this here, not just knocking doors down, but dragging people out.
Because it's the murder capital of the country. You just said black people are more harmed by this. We don't want to take out murderers?
No. I think really what true is you confusing what I'm trying to say to you.
Are you about the National Guard in Chicago?
No, what I'm trying to say to you is this, though. If we're going to talk about the problem, let's talk about the problem. And the fact about it is, when you talk about white America being pissed, white America is going to always find a reason that doesn't fit their narrative or what have you. But what white America fails to talk about, and what never ceases to amaze me, is the fact that the biggest threat is not going to come from blacks. The biggest threat is coming from within. You look at the average person that's been committing some of the most heinous crimes over the days, it's 22 to 29-year-old white males, right? Look at how
No, it's just not true, man. Violent crime, you just said, like you said, a small percentage of the country, about 12 to 13%, 50% of the violent crime, but the murder, a 12 times likelihood.
That's a skewed stat.
If you just, so you don't listen to them?
No, I said that particular stat is skewed.
It's not skewed. These are from the FBI, DOJ. And you know what else we look at? We look at Roland Fryer from Harvard, who conducted it, black professor, really respectable guy, honorable man, conducted a study, and he came out and he said, yeah, all of my research says that black men are 0% more likely to be shot by police officers than whites. Black people got so mad at him, he reconducted the study, a black man from Harvard, and he came to the same conclusion, and now he's not black enough.
Wait, so let me see if I understand you clearly.
Yeah.
You're saying, according to this guy's statistics, right, that black people are 0% less likely to be shot by a white police officer.
A liberal professor at Harvard, yes, and he conducted it twice. Because black people said what you're saying. He goes, look, I was as surprised as you. I was trying to find how much worse it is. My data showed me it's not. He reconducted the study an entire time. Now, he did come to the conclusion that an officer is 18 times more likely to be shot than a black man by an officer. This is a black liberal who studies statistics. At what point do you listen to him?
And I don't believe him.
That's you too.
Institution, and if he comes out and says something of the sort, there's no telling the backlash that he may not get. Listen, there are token blacks in every society. I mean, all you have to do is look back throughout.
And there we go.
Right?
Hang on, let me see what those stats were.
That is skewed.
It's not skewed. These are from the FBI.
Problem is, the fact about it is, when you talk about white America being pissed, white America is going to always find a reason that doesn't fit their narrative or what have you. But what white America fails to talk about, and what never ceases to amaze me, is the fact that the biggest threat is not going to come from blacks. The biggest threat is coming from within. You look at the average person that's been committing some of the most heinous crimes over the days, it's 22 to 29-year-old white males, right? Look at how
No, it's just not true, man. Violent crime, you just said, like you said, a small percentage of the country, about 12 to 13%, 50% of the violent crime, but the murder, a 12 times likelihood.
That's a skewed stat.
If you just, so you don't listen to them?
No, I said that particular stat is skewed.
It's not skewed. These are from the FBI, DOJ. And you know what else we look at? We look at Roland Fryer from Harvard, who conducted it, black guy, black professor, really respectable guy, honorable man, conducted a study, and he came out and he said, yeah, all of my research says that black men are 0% more likely to be shot by police officers than whites. Black people got so mad at him, he reconducted the study, a black man from Harvard, and he came to the same conclusion, and now he's not black enough.
Wait, so let me see if I understand you clearly.
Yeah.
You're saying, according to this guy's statistics, right, that black people are 0% less likely to be shot by a white police officer.
A liberal professor at Harvard, yes, and he conducted it twice. Because black people said what you're saying. He goes, look, I was as surprised as you. I was trying to find how much worse it is. My data showed me it's not. He reconducted the study an entire time. Now, he did come to the conclusion that an officer is 18 times more likely to be shot than a black man by an officer. This is a black liberal who studies statistics. At what point do you listen to him?
So the study says black people are not more likely to be shot by white police officers. And he just stated that it says white officers are more likely to be shot by blacks and the other way around. That's interesting. I would like to look into that study. That study would be interesting to look at. Let's see. All right, so here's the study. Here's what ChatGPT says. There was an empirical analysis. There was an empirical analysis of racial differences in police use of force. It says the findings are that on non-lethal use of force, Black and Hispanic individuals are approximately 50% more likely to experience force than whites, even after controlling for context. But the study finds no racial difference in officer-involved shootings after controls. So there are findings that say for non-lethal use of force, blacks and Hispanics are 50% more likely to experience force. They're 50% more likely to experience non-lethal force than white folks. But there's no difference when it comes to shootings, to officer-involved shootings. There's no evidence that says that blacks or Hispanics are more likely to be shot by the police. They're more likely to have lethal force used against them. I'm sorry. They are more likely to have non-lethal force used against them, but not more likely to have lethal force used against them, is what this finding seems to say. But I guess I should read the notes and critiques. It says this work has attracted controversy. Some critics argue that selection bias, who is stopped when, where, limits the conclusions. So, you know, it is what it is. But that is what the study found.
Once again,
I don't believe him.
That's skewed too.
Institution, and if he comes out and says something of the sort, there's no telling the backlash that he may not get. Listen, there are token blacks in every society. I mean, all you have to do is look back throughout.
And there we go.
Right?
And Uncle Tom, this guy, come on.
No, but here's my thing, Steve. Right? I'm not alleging that the guy wasn't Uncle Tom, but let's be frankly honest. How many shootings have happened in most recent history that have involved black men that have been unarmed? And you sit here and use that analogy that black men are analogy times. Listen, as a totally blind individual.
Wait, he did not call him.
This is a black liberal who studies statistics. At what point do you listen to him?
And I don't believe him.
That's skewed too.
Institution, and if he comes out and says something of the sort, there's no telling the backlash that he may not get. Listen, there are token blacks in every society. I mean, all you have to do is look back throughout.
And there we go.
Right?
And Uncle Tom.
Wow, he called him a token. Just because he doesn't like what his studies found, he's a token. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Come on.
No, but here's my thing, Steve. Right? I'm not alleging that the guy wasn't Uncle Tom, but let's be frankly honest. How many shootings?
He's not alleging that he's an Uncle Tom. He's alleging that he's a token. You know, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's better to be a token than an Uncle Tom, I guess.
Have happened in most recent history that have involved black men that have been unarmed, and you sit here and use that analogy that black men are analogy times. Listen, as a totally blind individual, listen, I'm even apprehensive. There was an incident where the police stopped us, and it was my cousin and I. My cousin is a retired military vet or what have you, right? And immediately when we got out of the car, out of fear of possibly being shot, the first thing I did was raise my cane and say, "Officer," I said, "listen, I am totally blind." Before we get out of hand with this, right? Now, I shouldn't have had to react like that. But when you start looking at what's really happening in this country, many times because here's the deal. I don't care if you put on a uniform, you can't legislate the heart of a man and his intent, all right? And many times these officers do allow that badge to give them impunity to operate and exercise their racism. Let's be honest here, Steve.
Some of them do. By the way, I just find it funny that when I came up and shook your hand, you didn't tell me you were blind this whole time. I was like, I must have woke you up. You could have said, "Dude, I'm blind." I was like, "Oh, my bad. I'm sorry." This whole thing. You just throw that out there like a cluster bomb. I'm like,
Say you should have waved his cane when you came in.
I feel like an asshole in the middle of the room.
That's what I told you when you said, "Is he sleep behind the glasses?" I was like, "No, he just can't see you."
Hey, look, I thought you were making a joke. I said, "Oh my God, here's this condescending asshole here."
It's okay. He forget he blind sometimes.
I had no idea.
No, man, but you know,
Yeah, but I do. I agree. You can't legislate what's in a man's heart.
Yeah.
But you can't throw out everything. You can't go, that's skewed. That black guy from Harvard who was always a liberal who did it twice is skewed. You can't throw it out.
How often do you see black police killing unarmed white people?
Actually,
How often do you see
rarely.
that? How often do you see that?
well, I tell you, actually, the stats show that when you're dealing with armed white people versus black armed people, white armed people are more likely to be shot by the cops than black.
White armed people are more likely to kill police officers. Look at what happened in Kansas where those
Let's call the stats a wash on that. Here's what I do know. Everyone wanted the body cam footage, and I agree. I was like, we should have body cam footage. We should have accountability for police officers, right? And we were to believe after the era of, remember, we went through Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Mike Brown, obviously George Floyd. There were so many that you could use as examples. We thought that we'd have a rash of body cam footage showing us the police brutality. You haven't seen body cam footage of note in the last year. Once that footage came out, it's about a 20-to-1 ratio where you see someone getting violent with an officer. We have not seen what we thought we would see. And now people are going, Okay, so maybe not the body cam footage, right? We thought we'd see all the abuse.
Wait a minute,
Reflects
before
the
you
stats.
jump off of that point, what about the body cam footage where we see white people and white police, and the white citizen is being belligerent with the police?
Yeah, let me say this before they go on something else. He said, another stat he just gave, he said an armed white person is more likely to be shot than a non-white armed person. So even though there's no racial difference in lethal force in police, in officer-involved shootings, so there's no racial difference in officer-involved shootings, but there's a difference in officer-involved shootings if the perpetrator is armed. That's the only way that both of those stats that he gave can reconcile each other. Right? He just said a white guy is more likely to be shot if he's armed than a black person. So, I'm trying to make sense of all of the stats that he's putting out there. The stats he gave before were verified. ChatGPT did verify those stats. So the new one he's giving out is that if you're white and you're armed, then you're more likely to be shot by police. White armed men get shot at a higher rate than armed black or Hispanic men. And I don't think that necessarily goes against the previous stat he gave, where there's no difference, there's no racial difference in lethal, in officer-involved shootings. There's no racial difference. And again, the only way I'm making sense of it is if there's no racial difference in shootings when the perpetrator is not armed. Yeah, that's the only way I can make sense of that. But let's just continue.
But the police showing extreme restraint in dealing with that person. Whereas black people will reach for your wallet, pow, you get shot. I got a phone in my hand, pow, you get shot.
And I'm
not doing anything,
and
pow, you get
The
shot.
stats don't reflect it.
but
But
here's the
white
thing.
people are being killed in record numbers right now, and they're pissed. And if you keep just not listening to them, look, like you said, white people are the majority of this country. You have young white people who are getting more and more mad. I'm just telling you the truth.
What they mad?
And they have the
Black
guns.
people
They're
hold
mad
no
because this
power. Why
thing.
they mad at
Here's
black
why.
people?
Here's why. They go, look, I'm 12 times more likely to be killed by a black person than you are a white person. And you go, well, that doesn't count. They go, look, my dad's business got burned down.
Yeah. And where?
My city got burned down. I've been accused of being a racist, even though I'm not. And I'm looking at this right now, and I'm not allowed to have an opinion. And I can't go into certain neighborhoods because I get my ass kicked. And then you just say, yeah, but you've had systemic power. That is a surefire way to breed racism.
Let's be frank about that, Steve. Now, first of all, here's why I disagree with you emphatically, right? Number one, when it is historically proven when there are riots, and this is the crazy part, most times we as blacks, we tend to riot in our own neighborhood for the same reason why we're not 12 times likely to kill a white person, because of that fact that the penalty is going to be much harsh, okay? If black people really were the kind of threat and menace to white people as we're going to sit here and say that they are, never mind the stats, there's no way in the world that most of us would still be here, because guess what? You guys will find a way to deal with the problem if it is from a multiplicity of angles, all right? So, like I say, when I'm saying this right now, when they come to
we did
stats,
deal with it.
who controls that narrative, Steve?
We did deal with it. You know what we dealt with it in blue cities? Cashless bail, catch and release. We did everything that was demanded. Defunded the police in certain neighborhoods. Guess
But
what?
no blacks ever asked for defunding the police.
Oh, yeah.
officers.
Yeah, they have.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the deal.
Now, I will say it's mostly.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's mostly black women. It's mostly black activist women. And
Yeah,
they're not representative of black men. I get that.
Just like the guy who killed the lady on the bus that you were talking about earlier, right? He doesn't represent Black America and what he did. I mean, listen.
Here's where he does. Just listen to me here. Here's where he does. Here's where he does to a lot of people. And this is what I'm just trying to, because last time I sat and listened, but I want you to hear something really important. Here's where he does. Young white, that person's parents, that person's relatives look at it and go, wait a second. This guy was out 14 times, and the reason he was out 14 times was because a black female judge, in the name of restorative justice, who has received funding from NGOs, said, we're going to have cashless bail and catch and release and the IOU policy in the name of racial justice. So people are going, my daughter's dead because it would have been racist to keep this guy in jail. You need to understand that, right? But you understand it, though, right? Because you just made those same judgments about people who existed 150 years ago.
Yeah.
This is someone's sister.
Her flawed judgment does not represent the opinion of black people, number one. Okay,
it represents a systemic correction.
Well, let's talk about systemic correction. And you know what the problem really is? When you defund opportunities to provide adequate psychiatric institutionalization for those kind of people, that wouldn't have happened. Because let me tell you something, even as a black person, as a judge, if you come before me 11 times with all of the information that you provided me with, you know what, before I release you, you know what, I'm going to have.
Hang on, I want to hear.
Really important. Here's where he does. Young white, that person's parents, that person.
Yeah, I just really want to hear what his message really is, because this, I think, is what his message really is. And I want to know if what he's talking about, is it really justified? Like, is this something that's deserving of a response, an appropriate, sincere response, something that when we hear it, we're like, okay, we understand, and we're going to respond in an appropriate way. And we're going to respond in a way that shows that we hear it and we acknowledge it. And we accept it, and we want to respond in a meaningful, responsible way. Like, let me just hear exactly what his concern is.
Person's relatives look at it and go, wait a second. This guy was out 14 times, and the reason he was out 14 times was because a black female judge, in the name of restorative justice, who has received funding from NGOs, said, we're going to have cashless bail and catch and release and the IOU policy in the name of racial justice. So people are going, my daughter's dead because it would have been racist to keep this guy in jail. You need to understand that, right? But you understand it, though, right? Because you just made those same judgments about people who existed 150 years ago.
My daughter would have been dead. My daughter would not have been dead had it not been for a black judge that was out for racial justice. Like, when black folks hear that, is that something that they'll respond to in a meaningful way? I don't know. I just don't think so. And is that a responsible response? Is that a responsible way to look at it? Where, because they're bypassing the fact that this guy was insane. Like, they're bypassing the fact that this guy was insane, and now they are looking at the reason he was released. I just don't know how black folks are going to respond to that. I don't know if that'll make black folks say, okay, we need to do away with stopping with this policy of catch and release. I don't think they're going to see where this policy is a bad thing. So I don't know how much they're going to sympathize with it. I think that what's happening would give people, the parents, the family members, the children, I think that would give them a right to be upset with that policy that allowed that to happen. but I don't know if it would justify them becoming racist themselves. It may justify them and their displeasure with the system, but I just don't know if it's going to justify them being racist. And for some reason, I think I guess I'm wondering if Crowder is trying to justify the coming racism, that racism will now be justified. And I think his response would be that it's not justified, but it is inevitable. It's going to happen, justified or not. And I think that is pretty much what he's trying to say, is that racism is coming, whether it's justified or not. I think there may be a part of him that is trying to justify it because he may have those feelings. I don't want to speak for him, but I just don't know if racism is ever going to be justified.
Go.
Yeah. But
This is someone's sister.
Her flawed judgment does not represent the opinion of black people, number one.
It represents a systemic correction.
Well, let's talk about systemic correction. And you know what the problem really is? When you defund our opportunities to provide adequate psychiatric and institutionalization for those kind of people, that wouldn't have happened. Because let me tell you something, even as a black person, as a judge, if you come before me 11 times with all of the information that you provided me with, you know what, before I release you, you know what, I'm going to have you committed to an institution, because number one, the greater good is for me to preserve public integrity, and that's on both sides of the spectrum. I don't give a damn if you're black or white.
Why do you think they're not committing him to an institution?
Because there's no funding available.
No, they were shut down in the name of restorative racial justice.
And his
That's
family,
why he wasn't institutionalized.
And his family
He should have
pushed
been in
against
prison.
it too. His family pushed against it in certain like there's some of them cases where they were in court. His family was saying, "Don't put him in there."
I know, and who gives a
But I'm just saying that's part of it. But when you only include the part that says the judge, you're not giving the whole story, and that's what media ends up doing. That creates these tensions in people. They straw man's conversations and only tell part of it.
No, it's not a straw. The tension is there. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The tension is already there. White people are afraid to go in black neighborhoods because
So should black people be afraid to go to school because a white person go come shoot the school up?
Right.
Because every time we see that,
not even close.
that's what keeps happening.
It's not even close.
But now you're going to ignore. Now you're going to ignore that.
I'm scared to go to church.
You're scared to go to church, but you sitting in the barbershop with almost 12 black men. Come on, Steve. Now let's be realistic.
Who do you think's more at risk sitting down right here?
Exactly. He know he's not in danger around us.
No, I'm in much more risk.
We don't do that.
And here's the irony.
You know, I just watched my friend die, right?
Let me say this. Know what bothers me about white people, and this is kind of
everything.
No, not everything. Not everything.
But we smell like wet dog or some. I've heard all this stuff.
Let me tell you what bothers me about white people. Let's be honest here, because I work with a lot of white people.
He's about to tell him what bothers him about white people. Let me tell you what bothers me about white people. Like, it's amazing how black folks just feel like they can say whatever about white folks. And again, white folks just gotta shut their mouths and take it.
So I have nothing against them at all. Let me be honest with you. But the problem the biggest problem that I have is that you constantly get bombarded with the excuses, all right? When you really come down to it, let's be honest, man, and let's be really truthful with one another. Ask yourself, what do you expect when you look at architectural oppression, economic depravity, and social disparity? What would you call it?
Bad decisions.
Huh?
Bad decisions.
Bad decisions.
Yeah, I think right now in 2025, it's bad decisions. I think everyone can make better decisions.
And you know what? I'll even go here with you. In all fairness, I think that's absolutely true. So my question for you is, how do we move?
Wow. He went from architectural oppression, whatever that is, and then just systemic racism, and just agreed that it was bad decisions. And I think the reason he did is because you can't deny it. Bad decisions. we make very bad decisions. We make very bad decisions. And I think the data suggests that we make very bad decisions. The same data that we try to ignore and continuously try to say are skewed. That data just suggests that we just make really poor decisions. And I think that's ultimately why he just couldn't, he just had to go with it and say, you know what, you're right. You're right. It ain't none of that other stuff, it's just bad decisions.
Economic depravity and social disparity. What would you call it?
Bad decision.
Honest here, because I work with a lot of white people, so I have nothing against them at all. Let me be honest with you. But the problem that the biggest problem that I have is that you constantly get bombarded with the excuses, all right? When you really come down to it, let's be honest, man, and let's be really truthful with one another. Ask yourself, what do you expect when you look at architectural oppression, economic depravity, and social disparity? What would
So he starts off by talking about the excuses that white folks make. Did y'all notice that? He says, y'all just bombard us with excuses. And then he went right into making excuses. Architectural oppression, economic depravity. Like he went right into doing what he just accused white folks of doing.
There's some I've heard all this stuff.
Let me tell you what bothers me about white people. Let's be honest here, because I work with a lot of white people, so I have nothing against them at all. Let me be honest with you. But the problem that the biggest problem that I have is that you constantly get bombarded with the excuses, all right? When you really come down to it, let's be honest, man, and let's be really truthful with one another. Ask yourself, what do you expect when you look at architectural oppression, economic depravity, and social disparity? What would you call it?
Bad decisions.
Huh?
Bad decisions.
Bad decisions.
Yeah, I think right now in 2025, it's bad decisions. I think everyone can make better decisions.
And you know what? I'll even go here with you. In all fairness, I think that's absolutely true. So my question for you is, how do we move past this?
Yeah. Okay.
How do we move past
I agree with you. I agree. And I think maybe we'll find some common ground here. If we agree there is personal accountability and bad decisions. And I think we also all agree that feminist white are the worst demographic in the country, along with lesbians.
There's a great book that says that they were her product. See, that's what I'm saying.
Like I'm telling you, like believe me, I don't have hold on. Let me just clarify, and I mean that. Angry white feminist bitches and lesbians, because if they didn't vote, we wouldn't have half of the shit. But and this is one thing I appreciate about black men, that white men are so black men can talk about these things, and black men are okay being masculine. White men are told it's sexist. There's a lot there. Personal accountability decisions. Now, just take that and apply it. What you kind of just did here is you blamed white people, without realizing it, for systemic discrimination, and that removes autonomy from a white person to be accountable and also rewarded for their good decisions. So if we agree it's bad decisions, personal accountability, we'd all be against reparations, and we'd all be against the criminal justice reform.
I'm definitely for reparations.
So
see, that to me, you said excuse.
Yeah.
That sounds like an excuse to me.
You ain't paid me back. You ain't paid me for what you owe me.
What did I take from you?
You can't start another bid.
What did I take from
until
you?
you pay this old bid.
What did I take from you?
You didn't take nothing. Your ancestors.
But you just said you.
Well, when I say you, I meant it as a euphemism.
But can you understand why white people hear it and get pissed off?
Yeah.
Because I can take shit.
But they're not mad about the advantages that were built into their lives.
So you want young people to pay?
It
sounds like an excuse.
Nobody wants to address. And even without paying us back, Steve, no, my thoughts are on this here. Give us an opportunity to exercise our ability and our autonomy. Let me give you a perfect example. There's a gal right now, her name is Joy Reed. Look up her.
I know Joy Reed. She's out of her mind.
Look up her educational background. You don't think Harvard gave her a degree just because she was a black person of DEI, do you?
I think she's an idiot.
Okay, so
but not because she's black, but she's an idiot.
Okay, so you're entitled to that.
I think Van Jones is smart, and I disagree with him. Joy Reid has said things that are so verifiably untrue. It's insane.
Okay, so but you know, as a man, I'm gonna.
I wonder why he felt obligated to saying he thought Van Jones was smart. Oh man, alive. He felt he had to throw. Hey, listen, I don't think all black people are stupid. Just Joy Reid. Just her.
I'm going to indulge you and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to indulge you. I'm going to respect your opinion, your frame of thought on that, right? I beg to differ tremendously, but nevertheless, though, that's why we're having this open discussion. But let's really talk about where we need to go from here on, and that is the fact that black people have every sense of entitlement as it relates to having reparations. And I'm going to tell you why, right? Because nobody has ever been as more loyal to white people despite the treatment than black people have, right? Nobody. You show me one race. You know what? They make options and opportunities available when other ethnicities come here or what have you that we will never get a chance to have, right? And then they turn around and tell us, stop asking about reparations. Whenever we want to ask for equality and fairness, it's a problem. So white America.
So it's been several $1 trillion. When is it enough?
Wait, spend $7 trillion on what? What did we spend it on?
Let's go back to Lyndon Johnson model.
Lyndon Johnson, you talking about the war on poverty? Is that what we talking about?
Yeah.
1965?
Why was that done?
All right, but here's the deal.
What about the Department of
Lyndon Johnson.
Education? Here's the deal. So now you're
The Department of Education. Like, is he listing all of these things as reparations?
saying the Department of Education. Let's go back to the Department of Education.
Okay, so my point is, these were. Hold on. No, I didn't answer your question.
All right.
The reason that this was given, right, when you're talking about the Great Society program, the reason when you look at the Model Cities program,
The Great Society program. The Great Society program in the Department of Ed. What else did he say?
Right? And then they turn around and tell us, stop asking about reparations. Whenever we want to ask for equality and fairness, it's a problem. So white America.
So it's been several $1 trillion. When is it enough?
Wait, spend $7 trillion on what? What did we spend it on?
Let's go back to Lyndon Johnson model.
Lyndon Johnson, you talking about the war on poverty? Is that what we talking about? Yeah. 1965?
Why was that?
The model state. What was the model state? What was that? Is he giving all of these things as reparations stuff? That's interesting.
Done. All right, but here's the deal.
What about the Department of Education?
Here's the deal. So now you're saying the Department of Education. Let's go back to the Department of Education.
Why would he say the Department of Education is a form of reparations? Why would the Department of Education be seen as a form of reparations? That's so interesting.
Okay, so my point is, these were. Hold on. No, I didn't answer your question.
All right.
The reason that this was given, right, when you're talking about the Great Society program, the reason when you look at the Model Cities program, urban planning, $8 billion in Detroit, adjusted for inflation, the reason that, and I don't know if you know this, black students in this country get more spending per pupil than white students. I don't know if you know that. That's an actual fact. Even in impoverished neighborhoods through public funding. These were the reparations that were asked of white people throughout each decade given, and then we're told, no, that's not the real one. They were given, whether you like them or not, whether you think they work or not. And by the way, I think they're dog shit. I think we should completely suspend the Federal Department of Education. I think the Texas state could do a much better job. But those were done in the name of racial reparations because they were demanded,
Steve,
and now it's not enough.
You say that, but Steve, listen.
What was that?
Say we should suspend the Department of
Those were done in the name of racial reparations. The Great Society program, the Department of Ed, the Model Cities program, and the fact that black students get more funding for public schooling on average than white students. He's looking at all of those as reparations and claiming that trillions have been given for reparations. I'm going to have to look into that stuff. That's just really interesting. I'd love to look into the history of those programs and see if they really were a response to reparations callings.
I agree with you. So why would they do it?
It's not just because it was done in the name of racial justice that it was done incorrectly.
That's the reason for it.
I'm saying that's the reason for it. But along the way of trying to achieve racial justice, you just did it wrong.
Was it done wrong because it was done in the name of racial justice? Or was it done wrong because it was a federal program? Because if anything federal run is just crappy, right? Regardless of whether it's done in the name of racial prosperity or whatever.
But let me ask you.
That's my point.
You said
People did it the way we were
Your
asked.
reasoning was right. Your approach was wrong.
So now you make some 20-year-old kid pay?
No, but you came out and said something
That's-
that's just
yes,
now.
yeah.
You said that you're against the Department of Education, right? Let me tell you
Federal
something.
Department.
Yeah, Federal Department of Education. Let me tell you something that has come up in a lot of circles that I'm always talking about as a person with a disability. The Department of Education does a lot more in terms of even with the enforcement of Section 504, right? 504 says that you must have accommodations for individuals with disabilities, right? Perfect example of when you walked in or someone just walked in, did you hear what that thing said? Right, left. Go down to Austin. Let me tell you something. When you suspend the Department of Education, you're also telling the remain 36 million people in this country who have disabilities, you know what? Screw you. Figure it out. We don't have to do anything, okay? And this is another reason, going back to what we said with the Black America. If you don't have certain mechanisms in place to ensure that there is a fair and level playing field, right? Guess what? The controlling party that's in power or what have you are not going to say, hey, wait a minute, let's look at this other disenfranchised segment of the community or what have you and see how can we provide
I'll
a more
disabuse you of that
inclusive.
notion. Okay, let me disabuse you of that notion.
Go ahead.
Over $3 trillion adjusted for inflation, right? The Department of Education, early 70s. Okay, before that, they were run by states. Over $3 trillion. What are math scores? What are literacy scores now? In both.
Depends on what part of the country you're asking that about.
Correct. Across the board. Across the board.
You can't go there because I'm gonna tell you why you can't go there.
Hold on. I'll answer the question. Because then I'll show you an example of something that actually works. Because we need solutions. They're across the board down. In other words, $3 trillion test scores are worse. And they're even worse in poor areas where there's more spending. Do you know where black students in New York City actually do really well? White Catholic schools, where they have more students per teacher, on average 35 plus. In other words, they have fewer teachers. It's done privately. Charter schools, school choice is something I support. That means for everyone in this country. Can't do it because it's racist.
Let's look at the academia, though. Okay,
That's why it's being taught.
When you start talking about that, what have you? When you talk about test scores, we can go just north versus south, or what have you. Let's look at the quality of education that's in these schools, or what have you. Are you going to tell me that it's a standardized academic agenda that's promoted throughout this country, or is it the fact that some people have a different education level than black? Listen, I work with people.
They're bad across the board.
I work with people every day that are out the north that have far excelled in
That's absolutely true.
than we have in the south.
And worse. There's no good. Right. There's no good. There's shit in here. And what I'm saying is, here's something where we could find common. I've proposed this, many people have, where we go, look, instead of giving money to a school, like you say, some of these schools suck, right? Instead of just putting, let's say the average spending is $15,000 per student. That's a rounded number. It's anywhere from 13 to 50, okay? If instead of putting that money in the administrative costs at a school, what you do is you say, okay, that's a grant. That's a voucher that attaches to the student, and they can take it to any school they want, so they have to compete. So that kid can now choose where they go to school. Can't do it because it's racist. That's why it's been fought. People say black kids would still be stuck in shit schools than white kids.
Why?
Well, see, that comes
Because they wouldn't be able to transport themselves out of a bad neighborhood. But right now, they're stuck with one school.
So when you start asking those whys and go down the rabbit hole of why and start asking, okay, well, why would somebody say that? Well, this is why.
Well, I'll tell you why they really say it.
And then
Teachers unions.
because the teachers unions.
Yeah. It doesn't make. In other words, if
But I get
a black kid right now has to go to
because
one.
in certain communities where they don't have certain resources, it's a lot of kids. Once again, I've raised my kids, graduated 3 kids from. I've been afforded some things in this community that some people down south don't have.
All right, so the vouchers don't work. The vouchers don't work because the parents would have a problem getting their kid to the other school. They can't afford the transport to get the kid to the school outside of where they live. Like that, the voucher money doesn't pay for transport to the school. The voucher money just doesn't take that into consideration. I don't know, but it's just accepted as the critique of the voucher program, as if it is what it is. And I guess I'm asking the question as well: does the voucher program not provide money for transport back and forth to the school? Is that not? And why isn't that? And why isn't that a fix to that issue with the program? Why can't money be allocated for transport back and forth? What do I know?
right?
That's a fact.
And I'm some of these school events, I'm questioning them like, how the hell y'all expect us to have jobs and still transport these kids to and from these events all throughout the day? But if them people down there had to do it,
So you think what we're doing now is better?
Because they ain't got transport. Half of them ain't got transport.
I think we need to go back to the real truth and the real truth.
Because that's what I'm saying. Because they're in impoverished areas, and we already know based on how we see.
So then how do we fix it? We have to pay for a
areas don't
car,
even
a
have
house?
grocery stores.
No, of course not.
Those same
Oh,
areas
that's
don't.
horseshit.
There's food
I see
deserts.
everyone
Come
here.
on now, you don't know
Everyone here
about
has a
food deserts.
smartphone. You can literally order any food that's ever existed on Earth to any
But
municipality cheaper than ever.
if you're in an area that already has a lack of resources and you're already low income, how you gonna order something?
Amazon one click.
But see, here's the deal.
You ain't got money.
We're talking about food deserts in 2025. Come on.
I think there's a broader problem that we were not discussing. You know what that is? You've got to go all the way back. This has been an insidious process that's been at work. And the bad part about it is, as long as we as white and black America keep fighting among each other, we'll never see the big picture. You go back to 1982 under Charlotte T.
I agree.
Who was the Department of Secretary under Ronald Reagan, Department of Education. She wrote a good expose many years later called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. She kind of patterned that after that B.F. Skinnerian behavioral modification, and it ties all into the founder before the Department of Education, which was General Education Board, where they say, you know what, we don't need more painter, we don't need more artists, or we don't need more poets. We just want good cogs in a wheel that are easily taught that we can mold under our own hand. That mantra still holds true today. So you got to look at that. You got to look at where we come from. We come from a nation that was industrious and coupled with innovation to now everybody tends to do things like you say with your smartphone. You know why? Because pictures keep you from looking at things contextually. All right. So when you think about this educational system, you got to go back to what changed in this educational system and why we're where we are. Because you can't just simply say, yeah, but you can't just simply say that everybody wants to be dumb or everybody in the South.
I didn't say everybody wants to be dumb.
Okay, well, tell you this too. Here's another problem why scores are so much lower in this country, especially when you talk about black
Because
America.
money doesn't fix a problem. It's that
Money
simple.
doesn't.
We've thrown
That's
money
a
at the problem
fact.
and it doesn't do
Solve the problem at the core root of it and start reforming the real academia, all right? That's where you solve it. So you know what you tell people? We're going to operate in a system of meritocracy. God damn it, you will eat what you kill. If you're giving you $50,000 to go to school and you decide that you don't want to or you fail to adhere to what's being presented before you, then shame on you.
I agree.
If
You do
give
away
me
with
50
DEI, you do away with the sex
What's wrong
affirmative
with
action,
DEI?
do away with all of it. Eat what you kill.
Do away with
Meritocracy.
DEI, but make it fair across the board.
But that's what I'm saying.
I agree.
If you're gonna
Make
do
it fair
away
across the board.
if you're gonna do away with DEI, you got to make sure that the merits are properly being counted.
And then you
Because
turn
the
around-
reason why DEI was invented, reason why affirmative action was invented, is because you'd have two qualified candidates, same qualifications, but one would get in strictly because his name was Johnny and the other one's name was Jamal. Well, we're gonna take Johnny because naturally Johnny's gonna be better at it, but they got the same qualifications. That's why affirmative action was instituted in the first place.
DEI came
now
in
when
because
we
of
hear-
shrinking
now when we
white
hear-
feminists that wanted to claim credit.
That's a snapshot you can present it in, but
I agree with you. I agree.
yeah, that's a snapshot you can present it in. But I'm just saying, like the reason why.
No, what I'm saying is,
you go down to ask why.
I'm being flippant, but the truth
Yeah.
is, black people were being admitted in record numbers if they had the same qualifications before DEI and affirmative action. White shrieking feminists wanted to take credit for something that was already happening because people had become less racist, so they can say, tag my white name on there, DEI. See what I did for black people? It's white guilt. And what I'm trying to tell you is young people who have nothing to do with any of this, their guilt is running out, and you can't escape the violent murder rate. You can't escape them losing opportunities and being blamed for being racist when they're not. And you want those kids to pay reparations? You're creating a generation of racists. That's what's going to happen.
And then you're gonna have a.
We're not creating DEI.
Yeah, I think the people he's sitting in front of, most black people believe that they've lived through generations of racist white folks. So just the idea that this approach is creating a generation of racists, how that's going to resonate with black folks, whether or not that's going to make black folks say, okay, let's stop this then. I just don't know how receptive they're going to be of that. Because their perception is that whites have been racist for generations, so this isn't anything new for them. And I just don't know if Crowder is gonna get the response he hopes to get. I don't even know what response he's hoping to get from that. I don't know what response he's hoping to get from that. But the only response I can imagine is what he's getting now. Like, that's their problem. That's their issue. So what? So what's new? We got to deal with another generation of white racist young people. What's new? How is that our fault? Now all of a sudden, these young white racists are how we created them. Who created the ones before them? So I just don't know how receptive that argument's going to be.
Then you got we as a black community, we're not creating a generation of racists. You know who's creating that generation of racists? Those older white people are feeding that into their kids. See, all white people are not racist. I don't believe that.
No, of course not.
Yep, that's what I said before. They're going to tell him, those new racist young whites gotta go blame their parents, the old white racists, for why they're racist. This has nothing to do with black folks. This ain't our fault. We don't take responsibility for nothing, bro. We don't take responsibility for nothing. So for certain, we're not going to be taking responsibility for creating white racists. Like, that's not so. So I just don't know how effective this strategy is going to be.
But the ones that come from families that have that inherent gene or trait in them, they're passing that on.
How?
See, I look at this, the gentleman that got killed, Charlie.
He called it an inherent gene. Why you think they're gonna take responsibility for something that they think is inherent in white folks to be racist? They feel like whatever they do, white folks gonna be racist. That ain't on them.
He was killed by a white man, a young white man, right? From the generation that you're talking about that's getting fed up.
Well, he was also banging
now, his dad had one ideology. He followed another ideology. That's out the same household. He didn't come from nowhere black. He wasn't hanging around with no bunch of black people.
I know, I agree. I'm not saying
that mindset. His daddy put whatever was into him. His dad either put that into him, or his rebellion from his father caused him to think like that. That we're not creating that. Black people.
That has nothing to do with them. I agree with you.
You ever seen over in Africa? You see an elephant with a bird riding on his back. That elephant ain't worried about that bird, because that bird not stopping him from doing the thing he want to do. We're the bird.
No.
We're the bird. You're not stopping white America from doing anything.
You know what? The bird just burned down $4 billion worth of cities and 60,000 assaults.
No.
And a young white kid. No, hold on. You got to listen.
Might get blamed for it.
Right.
The bird is half as big as the elephant.
See, you act like it's only blacks that was burning it down.
What about the Black Wall Street?
You know what I said earlier, and you listen, is when you have a young white person going, okay, why is this happening? And people go, Black Lives Matter. And they go, well, hold on a second. I have an opinion on Black Lives Matter. They go, well, sit down, shut up. Okay, now silence is violence. And that kid goes, well, what do I do? By the way, you're on the hook for reparations, even though his father, his grandfather, his great-great-grandfather didn't own a slave, and he's still 12 times more likely to be killed by a black person the other way around. What I'm saying is society is going to create a generation of racists. What do you say to that young white kid? What do you say to him?
Stay off of TikTok.
Stop reading stats?
Stop paying attention to what these talking heads are saying, because they're leading you down the wrong path. They're leading you down a path of paranoia and conspiracy theories.
What if their interactions with black people in general are quite negative?
Yeah. I mean, that was a great discussion. That was a great discussion. What can I say? I think there were arguments on both sides. But again, I just don't see where black folks are going to be receptive to the argument that Crowder is bringing. I don't see where black folks are going to take responsibility for the behavior of these newly formed young white racists. You know, I just don't see it. You heard them. They don't take responsibility for those buildings burning down. As far as they know, these were white folks burning down those buildings in those riots. And they may be right. It was more likely when you turn on the TV, Antifa Antifa folks were doing all of this stuff. And the poster child of Antifa isn't a black person. Poster child for Antifa is a young white person. So a young white person can go one of two ways. Like that young white person that's struggling to know whether or not to be racist is going to be listening to another young white person that's saying Black Lives Matter. Because there are young white folks saying Black Lives Matter and torching stuff. And I don't know if, the young white person that's saying Black Lives Matter and torching stuff isn't doing so because they've become racist. So I just don't know. They're not going to take responsibility for the racism that's being felt by this other white kid. Because they don't take responsibility for the Antifa white kid. They don't take responsibility for the young white kid claiming Black Lives Matter. They don't. And they're not going to take responsibility for the other racist one. Do I see what Crowder's trying to do? Sure. Is it a noble thing that he's trying to do? Of course. But do I see where it's going to reap the benefits that he wants it to reap? No. No, I can't. I don't necessarily see where I think that. But I'm looking forward to the next episode. We'll do another one of these for the next episode. But yeah, that's what it is, man. Bless yourselves.
I want you to listen very, very carefully.
It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. Bad mind them up to one hygiene a tweet. That's why enough of them, rifle a beat. Everybody want the cops, I want to drive in a Jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 days, we can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go sleep. Come mankind jealous and them idle go live. Them never yet plant and not try figure it. Bigger heads where you fight for the seed. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle with some meat. The system will slide where you fit.
Inna the streets so we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest say them want it out. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life. This a real ghetto life. Yeah. Everybody just a pre-success. When me looking at the street, you me see enough stress. Them all a fight people reach up next. Everybody want floss and a beat up chest. Juvenile in a them teen love sex. Them a breed the fast money, them no need subjects. And if you're unfortunate, please don't vex. I saw the thing said cause the streets don't rest.
Inna the streets so we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest say them want it out. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life. This a real ghetto life. Yeah. It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. Bad mind them up to one hygiene a tweet. That's why enough of them, rifle a beat. Everybody want the cops, I want to drive in a Jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 wheels, we can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go sleep. Come mankind jealous and them idle go live. Them never yet plant and not try figure it. Bigger heads where you fight for the seed. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle with some meat. The system will slide where you fit.
Inna the streets so we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life, ghetto life.
Everybody a pre say them want the dough. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life, ghetto life. This a real ghetto life, ghetto life. Yeah, 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 yeah.